Libs talk about systemic racism, but can't apply it globally. All right, let's get back to our two demons in the White House.
And thank you very much with your staff. He's the first foreign head of state to visit during our administration. And Bibi, I want to say it's an honor to have you with us. Over the past 4 years, the U.S. and the Israeli alliance has been tested more than any time in history. But the bonds of friendship and affection between the American and Israeli people have endured for generations, and they are absolutely unbreakable. They are unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
I'm confident that under our leadership, the cherished alliance between our two countries will soon be stronger than ever.
Unbreakable.
We had a great relationship. We had great victories together 4 years ago. Not so many victories over the past 4 years, however. In my first term, Prime Minister and I forged a tremendously successful partnership that brought peace and stability to the Middle East like it hadn't seen in decades. Together, we defeated ISIS. We ended the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, one of the worst deals ever made, by the way, and imposed the toughest ever sanctions on the Iranian regime. We starved Hamas and Iran's other terrorist proxies, and we starved them like they had never seen before. Resources and support disappeared for them. I recognized Israel's capital, opened the American embassy in Jerusalem, and got it built, by the way. Built it too, just not only designated it, but got it built at a price that nobody's seen for 40 years. We got it built, it's beautiful, all Jerusalem stone, right from nearby, and it's something that's very special. And recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, something that they talked about for 70 years, and they weren't able to get it, and I got it. And with the historic Abraham Accord, something that was really an achievement that was, I think, going to become more and more important because we achieved the most significant Middle East peace agreements in half a century, but the Abraham Accords in particular, and I really believe that many countries will soon be joining this amazing peace and economic development transaction. It really is a big economic development transaction. I think we're going to have a lot of people signing up very quickly. Unfortunately, for 4 years, nobody signed up. Nobody did anything for 4 years except in the negative. Unfortunately, the weakness and incompetence of those years, those past 4 years, the grave damage around the globe that was done, including in the Middle East, grave damage all over the globe. The horrors of October 7th would never have happened if I were president. The Ukraine and Russia disaster would never have happened if I were president. Over the past 16 months, Israel has endured a sustained, aggressive, and murderous assault on every front, but they fought back bravely. You see that, and you know that. What we have witnessed is an all-out attack on the very existence of a Jewish state in the Jewish homeland. The Israelis have stood strong and united in the face of an enemy that has kidnapped, tortured, raped, and slaughtered innocent men, women, children, and even little babies. I want to salute the Israeli people for meeting
yes, that is a war criminal.
Courage and determination and unflinching resolve. They have been strong. In our meetings today, the Prime Minister and I focused on the future, discussing how we can work together to ensure Hamas is eliminated and ultimately restore peace to a very troubled region. It's been troubled, but what's happened in the last 4 years has not been good. I want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for working closely with my transition team, the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who's here somewhere. Steve? Stand up, Steve, please. What a job you've done. What a good job you've done. Proud of you. Done a fantastic job. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Thank you, Mike, for working so well with us. Thank you. We have, in addition, Marco Rubio, who is on the phone right now, listening to every single word that we say, and he's going to be great. And Pete, congratulations. And Scott, congratulations. I see you're here. And Caroline's been doing a great job. She's really probably talked about more
Little
than
Marco.
anybody here. She's done a fantastic job, and thank you very much, Carolyn. We're proud of you. But we'll only be satisfied when all of these problems are solved, and we have the team to solve them, and that's going to happen. And it's going to happen, I think, very quickly. I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades, and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are actually a very respected nation again. I ended the last administration's de facto arms embargo on over $1 billion in military assistance for Israel. And I'm also pleased to announce that this afternoon, the United States withdrew from the anti-Semitic UN Human Rights Council and ended all of the support for the UN Relief and Works Agency, which funneled money to Hamas and which was very disloyal to humanity. Today, I also took action to restore a maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime, and we will once again enforce the most aggressive possible sanctions, drive Iranian oil exports to zero, and diminish the regime's capacity to fund terror throughout the region and throughout the world. We had no threat when I left office. Iran was not able to sell oil. Nobody was buying oil because I said, don't buy it. If you buy it, you're not doing any business with the United States. And Hamas was not being funded. Hezbollah was not being funded. Nobody was being funded. There would never have been an October 7th. 2 weeks ago, I once again designated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. They're trying to destroy world shipping lanes, and that's not going to happen. And over the weekend, I ordered airstrikes against senior ISIS leaders hiding in the caves of Somalia and took them out. Here in America, we've begun the process of deporting foreign terrorists, jihadists, and Hamas sympathizers from our soil, just as we have people that are extremely evil, and we're sending them out of our country. They came from jails. They came from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they were dumped into our country. They're gang members. We're getting them out at numbers that nobody can actually believe. And every single country is taking those people back. They said they would never take them back, and they're all taking them back, and they're taking them back very gladly. And I recently signed an executive order combating the vile wave of anti-Semitism that we've seen in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks. Together, America and Israel will renew the optimism that shined so brightly just 4 years ago. It was really a bright, beautiful light. We will restore calm and stability to the region and expand prosperity, opportunity, and hope to our nations and for all people of the Middle East, including the Arab and Muslim nations. Very important. We want the Arab and Muslim nations to have peace and have tranquility and have great lives. I'd like to now invite Prime Minister Netanyahu to say a few words, and we'll take some questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored that you invited me to be the first foreign leader to visit the White House in your second term. This is a testament to your friendship and support for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. And that's why the people of Israel have such enormous respect for you. In your first term, you recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You moved the American embassy there. You recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You withdrew from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. I remember we spoke about it. You said, this is the worst deal I've ever seen. I'm elected, I'm walking out of it. That's exactly what you did. And I think it speaks loudly for just common sense, just looking at things and seeing them as they are. And of course, you also brokered the groundbreaking Abraham Accords in which Israel made peace with 4 Arab states. We did this in 4 months. Nothing happened for a quarter of a century, but in 4 months, we were able, working together under your leadership, to have 4 historic peace accords. And now in the first days of your second term, you picked up right where you left off. Your leadership helped bring our hostages home, among them American citizens. You freed up munitions that have been withheld from Israel. They had been withheld from Israel in the midst of a 7-front war for our existence. And you just freed it. You ended unjust sanctions against law-abiding Israeli citizens. You boldly confronted the scourge of anti-Semitism. You stopped funding, as you just said, international organizations like UNRWA that support and fund terrorists. And today, you renewed the maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, all this in just 2 weeks. Can we imagine where we'll be in 4 years? I can. I know you can, Mr. President. For our part, we in Israel have been pretty busy too. Since the horrendous October 7th attack, we've been fighting our common enemies and changing the face of the Middle East. On that infamous day, Hamas monsters savagely murdered 1,200 innocent people, including more than 40 Americans. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burnt babies alive, and they took 251 people hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. And after this worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust,
it's crazy that he still lies about
that. The
that.
Middle East were absolutely ecstatic. Hania praised the massacre. Sinwar said that Israel was finished. Nasrallah boasted that Israel was, here's what he said, as feeble as a spider's web. Well, Mr. President, Hania is gone. Sinwar is gone. Nasrallah is gone. We've devastated Hamas. We decimated Hezbollah. We destroyed Assad's remaining armaments. And we crippled Iran's air defenses. And in doing this, we've defeated some of America's worst enemies. We took out terrorists who were wanted for decades for shedding rivers of American blood, including the blood of 241 Marines murdered in Beirut. We accomplished all this with the indomitable spirit of our people and the boundless courage of our soldiers. The Bible says that the people of Israel shall rise like lions, and boy did we rise. Today, the roar of the Lion of Judah is heard loudly throughout the Middle East. Israel has never been stronger, and the Iran terror axis has never been weaker. But as we discussed, Mr. President, to secure our future and bring peace to our region, we have to finish the job. In Gaza, Israel has 3 goals: destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, secure the release of all of our hostages, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. I believe, Mr. President, that your willingness to puncture conventional thinking that has failed time and time and time again, your willingness to think outside the box with fresh ideas will help us achieve all these goals. And I've seen you do this many times. You cut to the chase. You see things others refuse to see. You say things others refuse to say. And after the jaws drop, people scratch their heads and they say, you know, he's right. And this is the kind of thinking that enabled us to bring the Abraham Accords. This is the kind of thinking that will reshape the Middle East and bring peace. We also see eye to eye on Iran. That's the same Iran that tried to kill us both. They tried to kill you, Mr. President. They tried through their proxies to kill me. We're both committed to rolling back Iran's aggression in the region and ensuring that Iran never develops a nuclear weapon. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, Israel will end the war by winning the war. Israel's victory will be America's victory. We will not only win the war, working together, we will win the peace. With your leadership, Mr. President, and our partnership, I believe that we will forge a brilliant future for our region and bring our great alliance to even greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bibi. Very nice. Thank you. And J.D. Vance, everybody. J.D., please, Vice President, stand up. He's been doing a good job. He's been working very hard on all things, but this
Fake Catholic.
We'll take some questions, please. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, can a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia be achieved without the acknowledgement of a Palestinian state? That question for you too, Mr. Prime Minister. And Mr. President, given what you've said about Gaza, did the U.S. send troops to help secure the security vacuum?
So Saudi Arabia is going to be very helpful, and they have been very helpful. They want peace in the Middle East. It's very simple. We know their leader and their leaders very well. They're
what PC are you using?
People,
My
own? They
own?
want peace in the Middle East. As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll...
So he said he's going to take over the Gaza Strip. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we'll do a good job with it too. President Trump says, suggesting plans to rebuild the area. Trump repeats his earlier suggestion that Palestinians leave Gaza to go to neighboring countries. Egypt and Jordan have outright rejected this previously. Once again, going back to the same dynamic that I explained prior, which is they're taking a more hands-on approach to the colonialism. They're taking a more hands-on approach to the violence, and I think this is precisely in that, in that same vein.
Owning it, especially the strength that we're developing and developed over the last fairly short period of time. I would say really since the election. I think will be a great a keeper of something that is very, very strong, very powerful, and very, very good for the area, not just for Israel, for the entire Middle East. Very important. And we'll, again, have thousands of jobs, and there'll be jobs for everyone, not for a specific group of people, but for everybody. Okay, please.
I think peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia is not only feasible, I think it's going to happen. I think if we had another half a year in your first term, it would have already happened.
True. Many, many more, I agree, many more nations.
I think you can't prejudge and pre-guess how we'll achieve it, but I'm committed to achieving it. And I know the president is committed to achieving it, and I think the Saudi leadership is interested to achieve it. So we'll give it a good shot, and I think we'll succeed.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
First of all, President Trump, did you hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu at your meeting guarantees that the ceasefire will hold, including phase 2? And Prime Minister Netanyahu heard from you. Why are you refusing to set up a national commission to investigate failures of the process?
Well, I can't tell you whether or not the ceasefire will hold. We've done, I think, a very masterful job. We weren't helped very much by the Biden administration, I can tell you that. But we've gotten quite a few hostages out. We're going to get more out. But we're dealing with very complex people.
Wait.
And we are going to see whether
Bro,
or not
ask the
it
guy
holds.
next to
We certainly
you.
want to have more come out.
Ask the guy next to you. He's the one who's going to fuck it up. What do you mean? Oh, I can't tell you with confidence if the ceasefire will hold.
But they're going to get better.
You're
and they're
next
gonna
to
be
the guy.
strong, and they're going to have a good life.
What do you mean?
And we hope to get
He's
as
right
many
there.
as
Does
possible
nobody
out.
see
Whether
him?
or not it holds, I don't know.
He's
We
on
hope it
screen.
holds. We hope it holds.
I think that at the appropriate time, which I think will enable us to really investigate what happens, what were the causes of the failures, by an independent commission that will be accepted by the majority of the people. We don't want it accepted by one half of the people and not the other.
I know.
think we
He
should
said
have
that
it.
he's going to take over the Gaza
And we
Strip.
should
I
find
know.
out exactly what happened.
I
I'm
heard him.
insisting on it. And believe me, it'll surprise a lot of people when it happens.
Kelly, go ahead, please.
Mr. President, you are outlining something that is really quite striking tonight. You are talking about. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister. You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there, redevelopment? And Mr. Prime Minister, do you see this idea as a way to expand the boundaries of Israel and to have a longer peace? Even
How
though
can you
the
stay
Israeli
sane while
people
listening
know
to this?
How important that land is to you and your citizens.
I don't know. I just expect the
as
worst from the start.
space is inherited by the Palestinians.
It allows me to be more
I do see a long-term
composed.
ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight. I've studied it. I've studied this.
Who did it?
Very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it
Who
from
did it?
every different angle. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be, and it's only going to get worse. And I think this is an idea that's gotten tremendous, and I'm talking about from the highest level of leadership, gotten tremendous praise. And if the United States can help to bring stability and peace in the Middle East, we'll do that. Bibi?
I mentioned again tonight our three goals, and the third goal is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so much terrorism, so many attacks against us, so many trials and so many tribulations. He has a different idea. And I think it's worth paying attention to this. We're talking about it. He's exploring it with his people, with his staff. I think it's something that could change history, and it's worthwhile really pursuing this avenue.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead. Right.
President, I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So before rebuilding Gaza again, obviously we take all the hostages, and one of them is Sudan, an American soldier who is alive. How will you be sure that you will take out all the hostages and then rebuild?
We're working very hard to get all the hostages. The
America
word is
first out the
all,
window.
and we are working very
Chatter.
hard.
There was
So
never
far, it's
an
been
America first principle.
moving
What do you
along
mean? Even the terrorists
fairly
themselves don't
rapidly,
actually
pretty
yield
much on
America first
schedule.
principles at all.
I'd love to have more
America
on
first is just
that,
pure
but,
marketing, so that
take
you
it
can
out,
put
and, tomorrow
profits first.
more are being released, and
You
over
can
the
put
days,
war
we'll
first. You can
go
put
into a phase two.
profiteers that want to rebuild Gaza first, and then the real estate developers that come in afterwards.
If we don't, it will just
It's capitalism first,
make
always and
us,
forever.
somewhat more violent. I will tell you that, because they would have broken their word. Mr. Witkoff and his entire group have been working 24 hours around the clock, and they want them out, and promises have been made to them, and we'll see whether or not those promises will be kept. But we want all the hostages, that's right.
How much time do you think it will take? A month?
Do you support, Mr. President, do you support Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, areas which many believe is the biblical homeland of the Jewish people?
That's a
Well,
great
we're
question,
discussing
man.
that
That's
with,
totally.
many of your representatives. You're represented very well, and people do like the idea, but we haven't taken a position on it yet. But we will be we'll be making an announcement probably on that very specific topic over the next 4 weeks. Go ahead, please.
Holy
Please.
fuck.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. So you just said that you think all the Palestinians should be relocated to other countries. Does that mean that you do not support a two-state solution?
It doesn't mean anything about a two-state or one state or any other state. It means that we want to have, we want to give people a chance at life. They have never had a chance at life because the Gaza Strip has been a hellhole for people living there. It's been horrible. Hamas has made it so bad, so dangerous, so unfair to people. And by doing what I'm recommending that we do, it's a very strong recommendation, but it is a strong recommendation. By doing that, we think we're going to bring perhaps great peace to long beyond this area. And I have to stress, this is not for Israel. This is for everybody in the Middle East, Arabs, Muslims. This is for everybody. This would be where they can partake in terms of jobs and living and all of the other benefits. And I think it's very important. It just doesn't work the other way. You know, you can't keep trying. They just has been going along for so many decades, you can't even count. You just can't keep doing. You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again. Gaza is a hellhole right now. It was before the bombing started, frankly. And we're going to give people a chance to live in a beautiful community that's safe and secure. And I think you're going to see a tremendous outflowing of support. I can tell you, I spoke to other leaders of countries in the Middle East, and they love the idea. They say it would really bring stability, and what we need is stability. Yes, sir, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Are you still committed to imposing sanctions on the ICC, despite the move being stalled in the Senate? And please, a question for the Prime Minister as well. The President has been very clear about his desire to achieve a deal with Saudi Arabia. How do you settle this if Israel is required to renew the war against Hamas in the future?
That's literally Channel
Go ahead,
14. That's Benjamin Netanyahu's channel.
I think everybody understands that just as the President fought and defeated Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that we can't leave Hamas there because Hamas will continue the battle to destroy Israel. They'll do, you know, when in this temporary ceasefire, one of their leaders comes out, you know what he says? We're going to do October 7th again, except we'll do it bigger. So obviously, you can't talk about peace neither with Hamas or in the Middle East if this, you know, toxic, murderous organization is left standing. Any more than you could make peace in Europe after World War II if the Nazi regime was left standing and the Nazi army was left standing. You want a
That
different
did
future,
happen,
you
by
gotta
the way.
knock out the people
But
who wanna
you guys are
destroy
also
you and
closer to
destroy
the
peace.
Nazis in this
That's what we're
situation.
gonna do.
Israel is the
I
Nazis
think
in this
that will
equation.
also bring usher
For the
in,
record.
actually, the peace with
Make
Saudi
no
Arabia
mistake.
and with others, and I think there will be others too.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Not only did the United States of America do that already,
Do you have any plan to change Afghanistan situation? Are you able to recognize Taliban? Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan suffered woman. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from? Oh. Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying. But,
Oh
but
my
I just say
God.
this.
Oh
good
my
luck.
God.
Live in peace. Go ahead, please. That's okay. Yeah, please.
And Prime Minister, you said earlier today that it was tough for you to implement these sanctions on Iran, but you
Yeah.
did indicate that you were willing to negotiate with them. What would that look like, and are you in conversations with them? And
Yeah.
the same for the Prime Minister, sir.
I hated doing it. I want Iran to be peaceful and successful. I hated doing it. I did it once before, and we brought them down to a level where they were unable to give any money. They had to survive themselves, and they had no money. They were essentially broke, and they had no money for, as I said, Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for any form of terror. The 28, if you call it, the 28 sites of terror.
the chatter saying Israel cannot be Nazi, you should tell that to Benjamin Netanyahu. You know, tell him to stop being a Nazi then.
Then, and I hate to do it just as much now. And I say this, and I say this to Iran, who's listening very intently. I would love to be able to make a great deal, a deal where you can get on with your lives and you'll do wonderfully. You'll do wonderfully. Incredible people, industrious, beautiful, just an unbelievable group of people in Iran. And I know them well, have many friends from Iran and many friends that are Americans from Iran, and they're very proud of Iran. But I hated to do it, just so you understand. And I hope we're going to be able to do something so that it doesn't end up in a very catastrophic situation. I don't want to see that happen. I really want to see peace, and I hope that we're able to do that. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. I'm not putting restrictions. They cannot have one thing. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if I think that they will have a nuclear weapon, despite what I just said, I think that's going to be very unfortunate for them. If, on the other hand, they can convince us that they won't, and I hope they can. It's very easy to do. It's actually very easy to do. I think they're going to have an unbelievable future. Yeah, please, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. You just laid out your plan for Gaza.
Yes.
Can you lay out your plan for Ukraine and also...
For Ukraine?
For Ukraine, yes. You consider yourself a strong leader. You blamed your predecessor for letting Russia to take over Ukraine. Will you demand from Putin to get out of Ukraine, from sovereign territory of Ukraine?
So we're dealing right now on the subject. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we're here for another reason, but we are having very good talks, very constructive talks on Ukraine. And we are talking to the Russians. We're talking to the Ukrainian leadership. It would have never happened. That would have never happened. It should have never happened. I get reports every week, the number of soldiers, mostly soldiers now. The cities have been largely demolished. You talk about a very sad sight to see. We talk Gaza. Well, many of these cities look as bad as Gaza and worse, what's happened to them. And I want to see that end. And I want to see it end for one simple reason, the life of young people being absolutely obliterated on both sides. You probably have 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers dead, 800,000, maybe more Russian soldiers dead. It's very flat land, and the only thing that's going to stop a bullet is a human body, in this case, usually soldiers. And the numbers are staggering when you hear the real numbers in Ukraine, what the numbers are. And this doesn't include the cities that have been demolished and all of the people that were killed. So I want to see it stopped. We're having very good
Talking about Ukraine in this way, immediately after, even though Trump does exercise a level of empathy towards Russia that definitely doesn't exist for the Palestinians is such an obvious, glaringly obvious hypocrisy. To just be like, oh, it's really devastating for Ukrainian cities. Like, meanwhile, it's just like,
It is a human tragedy, and we're going to try very hard to stop it. Yeah, please.
like, is he gonna tell the Ukrainians to move? Actually, with Donald Trump, I don't even want to know the answer to that, to be honest. He's gonna be like, yeah, well, we just gotta get 30 million Ukrainians to move. They're all Slavic anyway. They can go to Poland. They are already in Poland. They could go to Poland. The more I talk about it, the more I'm thinking maybe he will say that. So obviously, let's not,
pivot of everything that we're talking about. He said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And we fully agree with that. If
But Russians are the Israelis and Ukrainians are the Palestinians in this situation.
So be it.
No, I know that. I'm saying he's gonna. At first, I was gonna say it demonstrates this like glaringly obvious hypocrisy where he understands the humanity of the Ukrainians, but it's Donald Trump, so he doesn't really understand that either. So in some ways, it's not. Anyway,
It's a campaign of pressure to see if we can get something done. He doesn't want to do what some people think will automatically happen because they're very difficult people to deal with, as you know. But if we could solve this problem without warfare, without all of the things that you've been witnessing over the last number of years, it would be, I think it would be a tremendous thing. Go ahead, please.
Do you have any plans to visit Israel soon?
To visit where?
Israel and Gaza.
Oh, I love Israel. I will visit there, and I'll.
Russians
visit
aren't the
Gaza,
same as
and I'll
Israelis. Are
visit
you
Saudi
insane?
Arabia, and I'll visit.
It's reductive, but in this dynamic, the Russian state's actions in Ukraine are quite similar are definitely closer to Israelis' actions in Gaza. The Israeli government's actions in Gaza. What are you talking about? Sure, Ukraine is not an occupied territory that is like dominated by the Russian government in perpetuity, in the same way that the Gaza Strip is. Not an open air prison, but yeah, no, there is definitely a lot more similarities with Russian action in Ukraine to Israeli action in Gaza.
I've been invited.
The only difference is Ukraine is backed by all of the Western powers and is a standing military and is a state with sovereignty, whereas Palestine has never gotten that.
Go ahead.
On what you were saying there.
Say it. Go ahead, please.
Just to follow up on what you were saying about the Gazans leaving Gaza, going to other countries. One, where exactly are you suggesting that they should go? And two, are you saying they should return after it's rebuilt? And if not, who do you envision living there?
I envision a world, people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they've tried the other, and they've tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't
Look at Netanyahu's face when Trump talks about permanent ethnic displacement. He can't even stop himself from smirking.
You just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed that live there now can live in peace in a much better situation because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace. We'll make sure that it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly we're talking about. And I have a feeling that despite them saying no, I have a feeling that the king in Jordan and that the general president, but that the general in Egypt will open their hearts and will give us the kind of land that we need to get this done. And people can live in harmony and in peace. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, Jordan has already said that that's not going to happen, but it doesn't matter because Jordan is literally already a Western invention to begin with. So I don't know how much pressure they can apply in this process. But it's wonderful because this way, you push the Palestinians into Egypt and Jordan, and then a decade later, you can also invade Egypt and Jordan. You know, saying security threats exist. This way, Israel can maintain its Greater Israel project. Here, let's look at what CNN is saying about this this disastrous
Live
press
there.
conference.
Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there.
American foreign policy only goes in one direction, chat. As I've said time and time again, it's uniparty and it only goes in one direction, and that direction is fucking evil. Okay? What a lot of Americans, or what a lot of the people in charge right now fail to comprehend here, is that the forcible ethnic displacement of 1.8 million Palestinians in broad daylight to Egypt and Jordan will not only destabilize these countries, right? It will create a gigantic problem in terms of instability for these nations, because every single person under the rulership of Sisi or under the rulership of the Jordanian king recognizes right from wrong and will create unimaginable chaos in the region. Okay. Same with Saudi Arabia. Why do you think MBS still says, hey, I love the nukes. I love you, Donald Trump. You are my guy. Okay. I've given you billions of dollars. You're my buddy. You're my buddy in the White House. I'm happy to play ball with you. But having said that, we got to fucking recognize Palestine. Okay. 67 boundaries. MBS has time and time again maintained the position that he thinks Palestinians are annoying, okay? In the simplest terms, Mohammed bin Salman, the king of Saudi Arabia, crown prince of Saudi Arabia, has long maintained the position that he considers the Palestinian plight as a nuisance. But why is he still saying we have to make sure that there is some sort of recognition for Palestinian territory? It's because even in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi public is directly at odds with MBS. Okay? If it were up to MBS, he'd be like, yeah, wipe them out. I don't care. Great. Kill them all. Right? I want to be able to do more sports washing. I want to be recognized broadly. I want nukes. I want to be recognized broadly by the Western world. The problem for him, though, is that even his population in Saudi Arabia are very, very frustrated if he were to concede to Israel without any sort of recognition of a Palestinian state. Okay?
President say such words. Never mind the history here that really flies in the face of so much of what he said. But let's just focus on the president himself for one moment. He also said did not back away from the idea of sending U.S. troops to the region. Donald Trump rose in his political prominence because of his opposition to America's longest wars in the Middle East, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan. And there we heard President Trump saying, not ruling out the idea of sending U.S. Troops to the region. So that, of course, is one issue. But the whole idea of the U.S. owning that, and he was asked there, under what authority would that happen, answering everyone loves the idea. Yeah. And, of course, our own Caitlin Collins asking the question there, what happens sort of when it's rebuilt, and envisioning this
USA
as
taking over Gaza, Pog. Dude, that's awesome. I love imagining corn-fed boys from Arkansas going and dying in the Middle East at the behest of our additional state there, Israel. Our military base in the region is far too important for us. So you're just going to go die in the Middle East. Awesome, dude. Sick. Okay, good luck. You're going to get your legs blown off. You're going to get your dick blown off. You're going to come back home if you're lucky, and you'll get some of that sweet health care. Okay? Lot to look forward to. Pog. Yeah. We're dying. We're dying for Israel, baby. Hell yeah. Fantastic. Man, look at Bibi smiling as he sees his domestic coalition reform comfortably after all of this. As is his political survival is secured. You, me, and so many others have been saying this would happen for more than a year, but it somehow still hits like a truck to see with my own eyes. I just pray the world doesn't look away. I don't know what the world is capable of doing if America has its heart set on permanent occupation and permanent death and destruction in the region. I truly don't know. That's the other side of this process. The only country that can save us is China, and China has its own allegiances with Israel, as I've mentioned time and time again. So I don't know. It is incredibly bleak. I'm not going to lie to you.
Building off of what Trump came out and said in his opening statement that built off of what he had been saying all day long, even before the Israeli prime minister arrived here at the White House, which was talking about Palestinians leaving Gaza while it is being rebuilt. He has now suggested twice that Egypt and Jordan could take them. Both of those countries have outright rejected any notion of that happening. And I should note the King of Jordan will be visiting here next week, as the president was just referencing to me there when he was answering my question, and looking at this in terms of what this looks like going forward and how the United States would take ownership of the U.S. Gaza. He left open the idea that American forces could be involved in that. But the real crux of that question is where the Palestinians are supposed to go. There are over 1 million people living in that enclave. And while the president is talking about what it looks like now and how destroyed it has been since this war started 16 months ago, that is the question here, because obviously this is an area that is rife with tension and incredibly sensitive. And what that could look like is a massive question here of what could happen next. And so the president there unable to say where he thinks the Palestinians should go after this, where they would go while Gaza is being rebuilt. He said that they could potentially return to Gaza after that happened. That was the first time that he had suggested that all day long. And obviously is a key question. It is their homeland. It is where the Palestinians live right now. And so the question not just of who is in charge of the Gaza Strip after it would be rebuilt, but clearly you heard the president there essentially viewing this through a real estate lens, saying it could be the Riviera of the Middle East, as he was articulating what this could look like in terms of who lives there and who is in control of it. That has created a ton of questions. What does this mean for the future of the ceasefire tonight, Aaron? I think that hangs in the balance, because there was already a question when the prime minister was arriving here of how that second phase would be carried out and what exactly that would look like. Now, the question is whether or not Hamas still abides by this ceasefire, as they are hearing the American president say that the U.S. is going to take over the land in which Hamas lives now. And of course, many of these Palestinian civilians who have been fleeing this war and already displaced from their homes. And now the U.S. president is suggesting that they could permanently.
Do you think Saudi Arabia and Sunni Arab states will cede to U.S.-Israeli demands for Palestinian displacement to refugee camps in neighboring countries? The forcible displacement of 1.8 million is genocide. There is no room for ambiguity or plausible deniability whatsoever. It's so fucked, man. Yeah, but don't you understand? He wants to build a Riviera. They're not even hiding it. Like, they're openly just stating mass ethnic displacement of 1.8 million Palestinians indigenous to the land that have already been displaced once to go to the Gaza Strip, out of the Gaza Strip. It is unambiguously ethnic cleansing.
What even would be the reaction within Israel to hear the president of the United States saying what he just said?
CNN's framing of it
I
is
think,
wrong.
Aaron, we need to be really clear about what we just heard from the president of the United States.
CNN's framing of this is wrong. Okay, they're doing State Department. They're running defense for the State Department, claiming, "Oh no, they'll be able to go back once it's rebuilt." Okay, they can stay there while it's being rebuilt. Then, okay, that's it. They're there right now. They're living in the fucking rubble. Move them into Israel if you want. If you want a guaranteed return to the Gaza Strip, then you got to move them into Israel. That's the reality, okay? Because if there's one group of people that definitely would be tasked with rebuilding Gaza ASAP, it would be Israelis, okay? It's actually mind-boggling how in the same sentence CNN just said, it is now a question of whether Hamas abides by the ceasefire after Hamas said the U.S. will take over Gaza. Am I going insane? Did I hear that wrong? No, you're not going insane. I think this is, it's actually not that complicated at all. When you realize that the people that we are talking about, at least in mainstream outlets, are not seen as real human beings, it becomes much clearer how this kind of propaganda can happen. Palestinians are not considered to be real human beings. They're not considered to be human at all. So obviously, how to deal with them can be talked about in these ways. There's no other group of people that you could talk like this about across the board. That's it.
We'll talk to someone who will talk about how they still have the keys to their family's home in Ashkelon, which is on obviously the Israeli side, who are Palestinians. Like, to imagine the people who live in Gaza are just going to happily, merrily go live in some kind of a permanent refugee camp, like Syrians have been living in.
Okay,
Syria,
great.
obviously.
They're anti-Trump, so they'll finally cover it truthfully.
The only reason to go back is if they have nowhere else to go. Jim, of course, that's not the reason they want to go back. They want to go back because it's home. So then what does all this actually mean? Does this all just become a whole lot of hot air or not?
Well, listen, apply that principle to any other war or conflict that involves two people fighting over a piece of land. Did George Mitchell suggest moving the Catholics out of Ireland, right? I mean, when you were speaking about South Africa, did you discuss moving all black South Africans out of Africa to solve the issue here? It's preposterous, and it's illegal by any understanding of international law that you would forcibly move people away from their homes.
It's crazy.
The agency here, right, is the agency of the Palestinian people.
Right.
Are they going to be frog marched out of their country by U.S. forces as it's then rebuilt as a Riviera by presumably U.S. property developers? That seems to be what the president. It's not seems to be what the president is suggesting. It is what the president is suggesting in so many words. And I would just say that the thing is with Trump, he seems to be applying this principle, if you want to call it that, to other places as well. He wants Greenland, apply pressure to an ally, in this case, a treaty ally, Denmark, and take ownership, maybe send some money their way, and make it part of the U.S. Same with Panama. Violate a decades-old treaty to take back the Panama Canal. Where is the agency of the nations whose territory is sovereign, right? Much like the Palestinian people in Gaza. It seems to be a Trump worldview here that requires moving people off their land. The other piece I would say, it requires two other countries giving up their land, right? Jordan and Egypt to become new homes for the Palestinian people. And by the way, their leaders have said they have no interest in doing that.
And of course, there was also.
It's not about the leaders, man. It's not about the leaders of Jordan and the leaders of Saudi Arabia. It's never about them. It's never been about them. It's entirely about the Palestinians. And the more we sidestep Palestinians from this conversation, the more October 7 and the conditions for October 7 get primed up.
All of this. And watching the look on Prime Minister Netanyahu's face, I was struck, Jeremy, by the fact that even he, I don't want to use the word giddy, but in a sense, that's the right word.
So much for the protest vote against Kamala just made it worse. This is such a stupid attitude to have because one, there's no inclination that Kamala Harris the only thing that we knew about Kamala Harris was that she was literally doing the same exact thing that Joe Biden was doing, even if it actually harmed her electoral chances. Okay, that's number one. And number two, I maintain the position that Donald Trump was going to be worse than Kamala Harris. You're coming to someone who literally openly recognized that this was going to happen. I warned of this happening. And at the time, Kamala Harris, or at least any liberal that wanted to win, could have been like, yeah, we're going to actually put an end to this. We're going to put a stop to what Joe Biden is doing. And they chose not to. Okay. So saying that like, oh, so much for the protest vote, especially when Kamala Harris lost by wider margins than the people that voted for someone else, is just idiotic. I don't know why liberals often repeat this false notion. It just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris lost by wider margins than the protest voters that voted for Jill Stein. Even if you were to combine all of the protest voters, okay, even if it is combined, exactly, appreciate Hasan on how shit it is to mock the Gaza voters. Those voters made a rational decision based on what Biden and Harris did, especially if they assumed she was going to lose already, which she was fucking going to do. I can't believe H. Bizzle is saying this. I don't know if you're saying this sarcastically or not. Oh my God. We got the UAW, we got the DNC's very own H. Bizzle even fucking chirping right now. That's crazy. It's true, by the way. I mean, you're 100% correct, H. Bizzle. This is it. Kamala Harris looked at the electoral map, okay? She looked at the electoral map, recognizing the dangers of a Trump administration, and was woefully incompetent in addressing any of the needs that the American public wanted. So no, especially considering that she lost by wider margins than even the protest votes combined, this is an insane statement to advance. Regardless of the hypothetical reality where Kamala Harris would not be as bad as Donald Trump, which we have no proof for. And even then, I still maintain that position throughout the entire process. I told you that Donald Trump was going to do exactly this shit over and over and over and over again. Okay? Liberals just go with whatever narrative makes them feel morally superior. I mean, yeah, it's just like, what is insane to me, what is completely and utterly insane to me about all of this is that liberals just choose not to learn any lessons from their failures at all and just want to go back to business as usual politics. Now, they and the party can get away with doing that, but you as a voter shouldn't be doing propaganda for an incompetent party when their incompetence has led to Donald Trump's victory. Okay? You are a voter. You're not a Democratic Party consultant. So why are you running defense for their ineptitude? Why are you rewarding them for their ineptitude? It doesn't make sense. This is the second time that the liberals have lost to Donald Trump. Hi, my name is Julia Ayafe. I did not care that Biden facilitated genocide in Gaza, but now that Trump is in office, I suddenly want to act like I care about ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm doing it solely to score political points because I'm a proud partisan genocidal ghoul. Yeah. I hope everyone's happy now that they got Genocide Joe out of office. Yeah, they went from Genocide Joe to Genocide Trump. What are we talking about? And it wasn't even just about Gaza. Gaza was a key component of the electoral defeat. Okay, for Kamala Harris, especially in Michigan, sending Richie Torres, sending Bill Clinton out there, doing all this shit was obviously a unimaginably stupid decision. And I know that it was an unimaginably stupid decision because I was there while it was happening, and I kept going, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? One thing that I must remind people, okay, is that even beyond Gaza, the Kamala Harris campaign was so unimaginably inept, so unqualified to meet the needs of the American public that they lost. The reason why they lost by incredibly wide margins that you couldn't even make up for the fucking protest votes, if all of them combined, the reason why Kamala Harris lost to the couch, and the reason why Kamala Harris lost to people who were just more enthusiastic about voting for Donald Trump, was because they did not address the needs. Okay, Gaza was a big factor in this, but Gaza, technically, in terms of the Democratic Party's woeful incompetence and their inability to see the electoral map for what it actually was, is a mere demonstration of their attitude across a broad spectrum of issues. This problem is at the heart of the Democratic Party, okay? It's not just Gaza directly, even though Gaza directly played a formative role in this, but it's more so the attitude that they demonstrated in Gaza in not dealing with these problems that we were causing, that our administration was responsible for. It actually can translate, that blindness can actually translate to every other issue, whether it be protection for marginalized people, whether it be fucking healthcare, whether it be labor protections. Okay? or even defending some of the good things that the administration had done, defending its own successes. Every part of this process was fundamentally busted. And the proof is in the results. The proof is in the results of this election. It's that simple. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not just Gaza. Although Gaza played a major role in this, it's not just Gaza. It's actually a larger spiritual problem within the heart of the Democratic Party. Their inability or outright disinterest in addressing the needs of the broader population. You had hundreds of thousands of people from different walks of life, but especially young people, pour out into the streets on college campuses. And what did the administration do? They said, we're going to combat anti-Semitism. What did they do in the process of combating anti-Semitism? Arrest 3,100 college students. 3,100 college students were arrested. A higher number of arrests than at January 6th. Okay? Think about that. Think about how insane that is. They sent Richie Torres to Michigan. They sent Bill Clinton to Michigan to talk about Judea and Samaria. It was insane. Trump, on the other hand, being a better politician overall, was a better liar. He went to Dearborn. He ate some Palestinian food. You know what I mean? And was like, oh, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. That's it. That's all it took. The very fact that the Democrats lost on this issue, the very fact that the Democrats lost on this issue to the Muslim ban guy is insane. Okay? Think about that. How is that possible? It's like the TikTok situation all over again. Donald Trump says he wants to ban TikTok when he's in office. Can't do it. The Democrats now own the ban of TikTok. And then Donald Trump is now seen as the savior of TikTok. How do you fuck up so hard? It's like, I don't think you can throw this hard if you tried to deliberately throw. I feel like they're carefully designing the American political duopoly in a way where they are like purposely coming across as the most incompetent party imaginable. And a big part of that is also the Democrats' inability to understand that they're supposed to earn your votes. So now, in an effort to do propaganda for that principle that, oh, well, you fucked up, you should have voted for us, this is what they're going to do. They're going to say, oh, I hope you're happy with your protest vote that we didn't even fucking want. We openly said we did not want your vote, and people didn't vote for us, even though the margins were literally larger than the protest votes. Okay, we're still going to act like the protest votes would have mattered. And we're simply going to refuse to address the issues at hand here and keep giving the country away to charlatans who want to pick it apart for scraps and sell it off to private enterprise. I have friends mocking the Gaza voters today, and I'm like, why are you mocking people making a rational decision, especially when his fucking party lost a 32-count convicted felon and doesn't win elections outside the national swing? Nothing these fools scolding the Gaza voters are even doing is impacting the elections. And the fact that this party has parts of its base choosing nihilism over voting for it in the face of fascism shows us that nothing the party is doing is having a positive impact on anyone's lives. We had around 50% of the electorate choose a felon, telling people he would do the fascism. So where does this party get off on mocking anyone? Pack of losers. The other thing that is nuts on it is polling showed that most American Jews believed that what Israel was doing in Gaza was fundamentally wrong. So this kowtowing to fucking donors in Gaza is nuts. Once again, out of touch rich fucks steering American politics completely off the rails. Yeah. There were so many different polls conducted on this. Okay? There were so many different polls conducted on the Gaza issue and the broad reception, okay, of the American voter base. You had 74% of Republicans or 60% of Republicans, sorry, saying that they want a ceasefire in Gaza. They want to make Israel stop. Think about that. Much larger numbers of independents and almost damn near the entirety of the voter base for the Democratic Party. Okay? This wasn't a secret. This was never a secret. So if you're sitting around saying like, oh, dude, you know, here, you get what you deserve or whatever, then you're basically admitting that you had no care or consideration for the humanity of these people, and you actually kind of like that Donald Trump is doing this violence, because this kind of violence in your mind is punishing your neighbors who made the wrong choice, because all you care about is party. Okay? Party over anything else. Partisanship over anything else, especially ironic considering that if you're not a part of the party structure, then this party doesn't even care about you. It's crazy. So no, I will never support mass deportations, no matter how many Latinos voted for Donald Trump, okay? Anyway, I mean, here, yeah, this is another glaringly obvious indication of the ineptitude here for Kamala Harris. Chappell Roan comes out during the Grammys and makes a speech. I told myself if I ever won a Grammy and I got to stand up here in front of the most powerful people in music, I would demand that labels in the industry profiting millions of dollars off artists would offer a livable wage in healthcare, especially for developing artists. Labels, we got you, but do you got us, right? To which partisan Olivia Giuliana, the number one defender of the Democratic Party, and perhaps one of the worst propagandists for the Democratic Party, says, if only there had been a presidential candidate who had an entire plan to expand healthcare access. To which Felix replied with, do you think that the candidate might have had a credibility problem with that issue after claiming she supported Medicare for all during her doomed primary bid and then immediately disavowing that in a few dozen very public positions she held? We like to, I guess, like, people just, like, it's a very interesting predicament that the Democratic Party's most loyal propagandists also are maintaining the same out of touch, unprincipled stances that the Democratic Party's people in position of power maintain. It's weird. When Olivia Giuliana says stuff like that, she's not saying that to the broader public. She's saying that to people in power within the Democratic Party. She's basically saying, I'm playing ball. Look at me. I'm a loyal servant to you. Okay? It's very interesting. The Republicans don't work in that same way. Okay? They don't. If your call to action as a party year over year is always going to be, hey, vote for us or else the other side is worse, over and over again, making harm reduction arguments over and over again, okay? Although harm reduction is theoretically correct, Americans demonstrably do not move in that direction. They do not make a decision based off of harm reduction. They've shown that time and time again. They've shown that specifically with Donald Trump, as a matter of fact. What will it take for the Democrats to wake up to the reality that you have to sell people on voting for you? Okay? I don't understand it. They get this in every other facet of existence. Okay? They understand it. Americans are so capitalist brain that they understand this concept on marketing and its importance when it comes to purchasing commodities, right? There's no world in which you could be like, well, buy us because the alternative is so much worse. It's fucking stupid. You can't constantly go back on your first principles and then expect the American public to not look at that and go, well, you guys are fucking hypocrites then. You can't say Donald Trump is Hitler and then turn around and shake hands with him. You can't say Donald Trump's border policy is racist and then turn around and advocate for that same border policy while simultaneously saying Donald Trump is actually playing the role of a hurdle in front of reasonable border policy that we want to implement. You can't do that, because when you do that, people look at that and go, oh, so you're admitting that that was a problem and you were just fucking lying to us 8 years ago. Either you're lying to us now or you were lying to us 8 years ago when you said this was racist. Okay? It's a terrible situation to be in. Like, on its simplest terms, I'm not even talking about like the impact of the policy at this point. I'm simply talking about how this reads when you go back, when you flip-flop like this on a number of different issues. Like, and the Democrats have consistently done this. It's kind of crazy. They've done this on virtually everything. They've done this on fucking defunding the police, dude. The Democrats were like, Republicans want to defund the police. Not a single voter believed that. What do you mean the Republicans don't work in the same way? Is this not what Trumpism was all about? Did they not have people on Fox News speaking directly to Trump or Trumpism? No. The people on Fox News are communicating the desires of the broader public to Trump, at least when the election is happening. They are talking to Trump directly, but they're actually talking to Trump directly to communicate the desires of the broader public to Trump. Republicans are afraid of their base. Democrats run away from their base. The Democrats disdain their base. Do you understand? This is a key issue here. And there's obviously some structural reasons as to why this is permissible for the Republican Party, whereas not allowed for the Democrats. One of the key issues here, of course, is that the Democratic Party, at least on the aesthetic front, is advocating for anti-capitalist measures, right? Things that harm the bottom line of corporations. And if both parties are completely captive to corporate interests, then yeah, it's going to be much more difficult for the Democrats to push forward a comprehensive agenda that will undermine corporate profits. Okay? Democrats can't get away with giving into the needs of their base of support, because the base of support's needs are healthcare. We're talking about the eradication of a massive multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar sector here, if we're talking about for-profit healthcare, right? But Republicans can obviously give their base all the red meat that they want, because their base is demanding things that do not disrupt the existing hierarchy. Shitting on marginalized people, whether they be trans or undocumented migrants, is not disruptive to the pre-existing hierarchy, because it's technically not disruptive to capital. It's technically not disruptive to capitalism. Okay? There are exceptions to this, of course, when, someone is really, really invested in doing fascism. And we're nearing that disruptive cycle right now with Donald Trump pushing for tariffs, and then also Donald Trump pushing for mass deportation of all undocumented migrants. Tariffs are disruptive to capitalism law? No, I understand. That's why I mentioned it. And guess what? They didn't actually get implemented. They did a pause on it. And the tariffs were not even for... Wait, no, what do you mean? Uh-oh. I'm not yelling at you or anything. I'm saying, yeah, I recognize that. But do those ideas come from the base itself or those on high? No, of course not. Everything that Donald Trump does is for the base itself. But all the culture war shit that he pursues is for the base. Donald Trump is also... Take the trans issue, okay? This is a minuscule percentage of the population, totally marginal, utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, right? In terms of like what the government is supposed to do. And yet they get talked about endlessly, okay? Why do they get talked about endlessly? They're portrayed as villains. They're portrayed as contributing to the moral degeneracy of Western civilization. In the same vein that Nazis also said the exact same thing about trans people and gay people in general. But the reason why they use that as an issue is because it's not disruptive to capital. Okay? It's a great way to shift your attention back to a group of people that are vulnerable and have no serious mechanism of pushback, no legal recourse, no massive lobby, no way to actually actively fight back when the government decides you don't exist anymore. Okay? Same goes for undocumented migrants. And the point I'm making here is that Trump can so easily turn that conversation and reshift his priorities to trans people or undocumented migrants that way. And it's something that he has volunteered before, that Donald Trump has personally stated, and I still remember, in front of a massive crowd, I think it was at like CPAC or something. It wasn't at CPAC, but Donald Trump literally was like, I used to talk about all these different things, and you don't cheer as much as you do when I talk about trans people. Donald Trump himself was pro-trans in 2016 when he ran, played a major role in him coming across as a moderate voice to the broader electorate, something that people forget. Okay? By 2024, Donald Trump was obviously vehemently anti-trans. That transition happened because this was something that he thought was an adequate way to reshift the priorities of the base and give them some red meat, per se. Do you understand? He was never pro-trans. He just pretended. Yeah, no shit. He doesn't care. He's a rich guy. My point is, he's a rich asshole. Of course he doesn't care about any of the fucking issues that he talks about. What are you talking about? The only thing he cares about is advancing his own wealth, gaining more power. That's the only thing he cares about.
Palestinians have a bunch of different possibilities right now, Lindsay.
All right, Perry Russom for us. Thanks so much. Let's bring in ABC News contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East.
Yes, appealing to racism and bigotry is the name of the game, chatters. Yes.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu expected that Trump would announce today that the U.S. would take over Gaza?
So, Lindsay, we don't know. He did look somewhat surprised, but they did have a pre-meeting with Steve Witkoff yesterday before this meeting. So I would assume that this topic would...
The trans issue, even against Kamala Harris, is not even about trans people itself. It was that Kamala Harris would rather care about the silly shit than help you, okay? That's why it was effective. Anti-trans sentiment on its own is not broadly popular. Anti-trans sentiment needs to be packaged in a way where Americans, other things that Americans care about, have to be harmed somehow. Okay? And this is something that I have repeated over and over again, and is shown in the internal focus groups that the, Family Matters and all these other like right-wing Christian fascist think tanks have put together. If you just say, fuck trans people, they're mentally ill, people look at you and go, ew, dude, chill out. But if you say, fuck trans people because they're unfair, they're getting an unfair advantage in sports, they go, yes, I agree. Okay?
A substantial undertaking, and it's very difficult to see how it would actually occur.
With regard to Trump saying that he would like to see the U.S. take ownership position in Gaza, just in terms of cost and time, what would it take to rebuild Gaza?
So I've seen estimations that it would take anywhere but 10 to 15 years and cost anywhere between $50 to $65 billion. And that's just basic reconstruction. A lot of that would be, of course, dismantling and removing the tons and tons of rubble that has been caused by this conflict. So it'd go potentially 15 years to even get to a place where people could move in and live there if they were doing a complete demolition and then a reconstruction of a 25-mile long strip of land.
All right, Nick Mulroy, so appreciate your time as always. Thank you. One of President Trump's nominees was just confirmed. Pam Bondi will serve as Attorney General after a 54